Welcome to Lightning Talks, the part of the conference where you control the content and what we get to hear. We have a bunch of excellent lightning talks today. I'm super excited to hear from all of them. To start us off, because going first is tough, I had a little bit of Wikipedia trivia. Shout out to Devs of Wikipedia for helping me come up with these. So I guess a few trivia questions for everybody. Let's see how many you can get. The first is we're going to do some edit wars, famous edit wars in history. So you get to vote on which side you think won in the edit war. The first one will be Star Trek Into Darkness. So the edit war was over whether the I is capital or lowercase. Raise your hand if you think that the I was ultimately capitalized in Star Trek Into Darkness. And now raise your hand if you think it was ultimately lowercase. Yes, the capitalized people had it. We decided that into was a proper part of the title. All right, here we go. Question 2, yogurt. Does it have an H in it? Raise your hand if you think yogurt should have an H in it. Or did ultimately have an H in it. And if it did not ultimately have an H in it. Yes, you are all correct. And then finally, Beatles versus the Beatles for the bands. Raise your hands if you think we gave them the article the in the end. And then raise your hands if you do not. Yes, again, the crowd is correct. Probably unsurprising. Yes, we eventually did the. So yeah, that was the 3 questions. Pharos is moderating a talk, so we will skip to the third one immediately. So Noah, you are up with our first lightning talk. Give him a hand.
Now I got to figure out how to pull this up. All right. Let's see. What's that?
You could click original file.
Click original file. There we go. There we are. Okay. So a couple of months ago, when I first started using some of the large language models like ChatGPT, I thought this would be great for writing Wikipedia articles. And so I started experimenting with it. And I thought I would share with you some of the things that have worked and some of the things that haven't. A little background on myself. I've been an editor since 2005, 9,300 edits, 181 pages created, and only one block for edit warring, which was totally worth it. All right. My current interest happens to be in biographies of notable people in the conservative movement in the United States, simply as a way for me to better understand it. I don't consider myself part of that conservative movement, but when I want to learn about something and understand it better, I write Wikipedia articles about it. It's a great learning experience. So what works? There's something called retrieval augmented generation. This is available as Copilot on the Microsoft Edge browser. You type in a query. Who is Scott Hall, the bail bondsman indicted with Donald Trump in the Georgia racketeering case? The Copilot then formulates a search string, goes out and does a search, gets answers, and then constructs a little paragraph based on the references that it came up with. Now, when you think about it, it just wrote a Wikipedia article, right? We have reliable sources. It has summarized content. And you can go in and check and see, are these really reliable sources or not? And I thought, all right, we're done. However, if you compare what Copilot produces with the original reference, you see that what it's doing is not so much summarizing what's in the reference, but extracting representative sentences. and then stitching those together with reasonably good grammar. And in my mind, if you look here on the left, the highlighted, a bail bondsman charged alongside former President Trump and 17 others, that's word for word what Copilot said. Guilty to 5 counts of conspiracy, guilty to 5 counts of conspiracy. And I think that'd be a real problem for Wikipedia if we suddenly started flooding it with what appears to me to be copyright violations. All right, but still, it's a good way to find references. The other thing that works is using some of the larger capacity large language models like GPT-432K to sort of cut and paste all the references into one document, drop that in there, and say, write a Wikipedia article based on these references. And I also tell it, use the citations in the Wikipedia site web format. Use ref names in the citations. I attempted to overcome the copyright problem by saying, use your own words. It did not understand what I was asking for. So the output, again, looks really good. It's being faithful to the references. The site web format is correct. No hallucinations that I can see. I dropped that right into the sandbox, right? Scott Hall is blah, blah, blah. You've got all the references down where they belong. Is it a copyright violation? Alas, it is. And the way I looked for that was I used Microsoft Word. I took the whole document of the references, dropped it into Word. I took the Wikipedia the large language model output, dropped it into another document, and then did a compare documents between the two. And what Word does is it sort of looks for an anchor portion that is the same between the two. And you can see that in the dark text here. And you can see that this is a word for word copying from the reference into the draft article. And even if it shows it as being an edit, it still may also be a word for word copy. But this is just a quick way to see, do I still have copyright problems? Conclusions. Retrieval augmented generation, where the large language model goes out, does a search, and brings information back, can be useful for finding sources. It's my go-to instead of Google when I do an initial cut on an article. The high token limit large language models can be useful for reading multiple RS and formatting Wikipedia citations. But to be honest, for my own practice, it's just easier for me to read them and write it myself. I have to do that anyway. And besides, I often just don't agree with what the large language model has said are representative of what's going on in the article. Am I in time? All right. Thank you very much. I'll be around if you have questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Sheridan Ford couldn't make it, unfortunately. So next up, we have John.
Thanks, guys. Gonna put my 360 camera up here because I love the spotlight. There we go. Yeah, hands. Hi, I'm John, he, him. I've been using Wikipedia since I was in 7th grade, so 2004. I have maxed out the number of tabs on my app, so those are my Wikipedia credentials. I like to say I went to Wikipedia University because I've definitely learned the most from it as a place. And yeah, it was really helpful in me learning about the climate crisis back when I first discovered just what the hell is going on with our planet. And it was really illuminating because, yeah, frankly, I and most people are not very well versed on what's going on, right? Because climate change is complicated and scary, and people don't like grappling with it. And it might take the average person maybe a year of like really dedicated instruction to fully understand the scale and the problem and what we can actually do about it. I see this as an internet connected computer. I didn't prepare any slides, but I can just illustrate my point pretty easily. So anyway, that's what I'm here to talk about today is I've been a climate activist for 10 years, and because it's really difficult when you learn that the future isn't going to be what you expected, to just be like, oh, okay, and then go back to my life because I feel like I got to do something about it, and I want to engage and I want to have a say in how this is going to play out. So I got active, and the climate movement has gone quite a long way in terms of getting people to understand what's really happening. Here's the amazing picture, which is I'm talking about misinformation. This is actually correct information. Humble supplies enough energy to melt 7 million tons of glacier. Look at them proudly advertising in 1962 just how important and how powerful fossil fuels can be. It runs our supply chains, it runs our economies, it runs our politics, it runs our destiny in a lot of ways. But we're trying to fight that, and I know you guys, it's a little cold today, especially compared to yesterday. Remember yesterday? You guys saw some snow. Oh my God, you guys remember snow? What a treat. It's still been something like 700 days since Central Park has recorded even an inch of snow. This is not okay. I'm not cool with this. I want to do something about this. Good news is we know exactly what to do about it. The problem is that we are up against the worst and most entrenched propaganda machine that history has ever created, and that's the fossil fuel industry, because it has so much money and has so much power, and it has dominated the sort of common sense narrative of we need this. We do not need this. We cannot trust these people, and yet these people are the ones making decisions for us on a global scale. We saw this play out at the UN conference on climate change this year, where the president was none other than the head of a global oil company. So it's a bit of a farce what we've been doing, and it's really interesting to figure out how AI could actually help us in this regard, because it's such a big problem. Nobody feels like reading necessarily a 4,000-page climate report every few years about all the different ways we are screwed. But what if you had like a chatbot that could very easily extract the relevant information and give it to us in just like, okay, please tell me, just like bring me up to speed. What's happening here? Why is the weather like this? The wildfire, where is it coming from? Why is it in my lungs? Let's get real and let's grapple with this problem, because we really need to understand it if we're going to navigate a way forward. And that's really the opportunity before us, is we can create sort of an oracle, if you will, of climate information where we kind of all agree that this is what the science is saying. Because the reality is the UN reports, they are not the cutting edge of climate science. That is the lowest common denominator, most conservative thing that every 220 country in the world can agree on. But the people actually doing the bleeding edge work, they're right here. James Hansen is affiliated with this university, works at the Earth Institute. Some of the greatest minds working on this problem are right here, right now. And we can find a way to bring what they are working on together into some unified resource that really communicates the ins and outs of the crisis we face and puts to bed those arguments out there that try to convince us that what we all know is happening is not happening. We don't need to be gaslit by the fossil fuel industry when we are armed with the facts, but it's too complicated and most people aren't, and that prevents ripe opportunities for them to get to get the narrative that like, this is just the way it's going to be. This is not the way it's going to be, and I don't think any of us should stand for it to continue this way. That's why I have an organization called Climate Cafe. If any of you are interested, I have flyers. Come get coffee with us, talk about the solutions, talk about what's going on. There's not enough spaces for us to really engage with this, which is the greatest challenge of our time, really. And to sort of invert Molly's statement earlier, it's not a prediction, it's a spoiler. We know with certainty what is happening. Here, I want to actually illustrate this with an article I just found. And I'm always, God, I love Wikipedia so much for doing all of this. In climate change, just look at this. Just sit with the data. Just look at the graphs and look at how dramatic 1 year can be, the last year that we just lived through. And think about what it does within you and how we can best communicate all of these insane facts that we don't want to face, but we just got to own up to it, guys. It is here, and it's in our hands, and AI can really do that in the same way that Wikipedia has brought knowledge to a lot of people. We can demystify the climate crisis through all of these things. So if you want to work on that with me, let me know. I'm here. Take a flyer.
Thank you, John. Next up, we have Inspire with us, I believe. Great. Let's give him a hand.
All right. I believe this is your camera.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to be on camera?
Oh yeah, I don't mind. We're already on Zoom. Hi guys. Good afternoon. My name is Mike, or by my Wiki username, Inspire with Us. Some of you guys know me from user MuzuCats and Dr. X, who's presenting down the hall. So I'm a fellow at the LaGuardia and Wagner Archives here at the City University of New York. Our archives is an city institution storing precious documents from all of New York City's mayors, the Real Estate Board of New York City, the New York City LGBTQ community, and more. So basically, we're all about New York. So today I just want to talk about archival research and primary sources. So my focus is on economic history in combination with human rights and public health. And my recent projects have been working on housing policy from the Mary Koch administration, and recently also working on different articles. And we use at the archives, we use Wikipedia as an entryway so people get to know us and also get to know and use resources about New York City history, which there's tons of history here. But the one common problem we run into the archives is secondary sources. And you're like, wait a minute, what does that mean? There's secondary resources everywhere. So just to use as an example, one of my students worked on this with MuzuCat. Here's our problem. It's an excessive use of primary sources. So we are finding some ways and tricks to make sure that that banner will eventually come down. So as many of you know, we love open access research and resources like our lovely Wikipedia. However, we also run into the danger of something called no original research. And it happens by mistake too. So for those who are using archival documents from anywhere, this is how we're able to overcome a banner like this. So first of all, we should know the risk of using the excessive amount of primary sources. That one being too biased. So as someone who performs economic history and policy research, this is well understood. We want to avoid bias as much as possible. So instead, we supplement this data or article that interprets the aftermath. And historiography could also be used as well. And there's so many open sources that contains all those important data and research. There's also the risk of primary sources being too incomplete. So for example, this is just one page, right? But that doesn't really tell you all about the curriculum. So one way we approach this is to use the media or the press, because sometimes our documents don't have all the information. We don't know, like, well, what were the reactions to the curriculum? What were any oppositions to the curriculum? So we use the media and the press, and eventually we will get that banner down. And of course, research articles. Duh. Right? So, but also here at the LaGuardia Wagner Archives, we like politicians. That's our work. But you know what politicians like to do after they take office? Write books. So we use that to supplement our research as secondary sources and also helpful tools to help us understand the archival documents that we have that reflects their work. And lastly, there's the risk of using primary resources that record hyperbolaic statements. So instead, we supplement this with other primary resources, but with the assurance of a secondary resource. And of course, if there is no supplement possible, write about it or attend your next Wikipedia chapter meeting. So with these tips, I hope that we could pursue critical thinking and provide a wealth of information that's open and accessible to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great. Very quickly before our next speaker, there is no Q&A for these, unfortunately, but if the speakers could stick around a little bit so people who are interested in asking them follow-up questions can walk up to them, that's like how we're doing that for this. All right, great. So our next lightning talk will be Molly Stark-Dean.
I'm not going to scream like I did this morning. If you guys woke up this morning and heard me scream, that's what I do kind of at conferences. So at an online news association event, for some reason, someone from Women Do News came up to me and was just like, do you want to be part of this Wikipedia organization? I don't know anything about Wikipedia. So that was in 2019. I've been a Wikipedian ever since. Actually, Andrew anointed me a Wikimedian very recently on a Discord channel when we were talking about this event. So I wanted to do a lightning talk just about volunteering at Wikipedia, which is very important to Wikipedia because the lifeblood of Wikipedia is volunteering, and it's so fulfilling to sorry, I'm gonna cry. So it's so fulfilling to volunteer at Wikipedia because everybody is just contributing to the greater good of information. And like I said, I'm a journalist by practice, and normally journalism conferences are sad and they talk about how their industry is dying. And it's so inspiring to me that Wikipedia is all about how we're all growing and learning more things. And so the project that I'm involved with, Women Do News, can really help add to Wikipedia. And my little meta talk is all about planning Wikipedia Day. So I prepared nothing because the day hadn't happened yet. So today it has been very, very long, but I'm in charge of food and cake. The cake isn't here yet, but there is a fridge full of tiny cupcakes. And the big Wikipedia cake will be here at 3:30. I am very excited about that. And the Haitian patties are because I live in Flatbush, and I hope everybody enjoyed the Haitian patties that were out today. There's also emergency pizza. I mean, it makes sense that I put myself in charge of yelling in the morning. And then I was in the bias panel because of my involvement with Women Do News. And then I anointed myself the food person. I don't know why I anointed myself the food person, but we didn't know how many of you people are going to come. When I was first ordering a cake, we had 30 people signed up. And then the facilities person here, like, we kept on releasing people off the wait list. Being like, yes, please, like giving promo codes to Wikipedians that are already on their username. If you look at my username, by the way, there aren't that many edits because once a month I teach Wikipedia. I don't do much Wikipedia editing. I write a couple of articles. They normally get taken down because I write articles about women in journalism. But so today I was really inspired, and I wanted to do a lightning talk all about volunteering and how much I can't recommend volunteering for Wikipedia enough. They're all just pointing towards the greater good always. I mean, I had a back and forth with Andrew, and half of the day I did, because my brain was so frazzled, half of the day I was arguing for a room I didn't actually want. Because I didn't understand. My brain doesn't really understand like spatial knowledge, even though I was walked around all of these rooms I didn't realize which one was the world room and which one was the lecture room. So I was arguing to be in the world room, but I really wanted to be in the lecture room. And then I proclaimed myself, oh my God, what am I doing? I just talked myself out of things. Wikimedians are literally the only people who talk me out of things. And that's how I was anointed an official Wikimedian. And I am so proud to be part of all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Molly, for that talk. Shout out Molly for doing all the food. All right, we have our next talk in my hand.
Just pull this up. I do have a crib just to keep me under 5 minutes. So let me bring this up. But yeah, I'm really glad to be here to celebrating Wikipedia's birthday this weekend. I'm looking forward to the cake. See if I can get this in. But a number of us are also celebrating other things around this time. In particular, I'm celebrating Public Domain Day. I don't know how many folks are doing that yet. But yeah, shout out for the public domain. Yeah, so okay, good. We got it here. All right. And we're celebrating all kinds of things. Not just Mickey Mouse here in the center, but it's also about a lot of other great literary and works. And it's not just works from 1928, like the ones you see here, but it's also in the public domain is a lot of later works as well that aren't so obviously in the public domain. Like all the works as late as 1963 that didn't renew their copyrights, and works as late as 1989 published in the US without copyright notices. So Wikipedians have long recognized the value of public domain resources in the work we do. And if we can build up a better, more comprehensive and more reliable understanding of all the things that are in the public domain, we can share more of it with the world. And we can use more of it in Wikipedia and other free online projects. Now, I work at the libraries at the University of Pennsylvania, and our collections have a lot of public domain materials. And we've digitized some of it, usually the stuff that's really old enough to be obviously in the public domain, but we also have a lot of non-obvious, newer stuff that's actually in the public domain as well. In particular, we have a lot of serials, journals, magazines, newspapers, newsletters and the like. They're often great sources for knowledge and culture that you can't find anywhere else. And a lot of this content from the 20th century is public domain because the publishers didn't bother to maintain their copyrights. So a while back, we started what we call the Deep Backfile Serials Project. We wrote some code to identify serials in our collection that might be in the public domain. And that table of serials we compiled was big, and we weren't likely to research all of it anytime soon. But then the COVID pandemic hit, and we had to close the library buildings. And we realized it was a great opportunity to have many of our staff who are now working from home research the copyright of a lot of these serials so they could eventually be made online, and not just during the lockdowns, but other times as well. And to do this, we created a detailed questionnaire that allowed a librarian to consult some designated sites, answer some questions about any serial in our list. And once they'd answered all the questions they could, an expert would review it, and then we'd post what we found out about what was copyrighted in that serial, what seemed to be public domain, and what could be freely put online. Now, some serials like The New Yorker had regular renewals, and pretty much all of their issues get the full 95 years of copyright. But for other serials, say the Columbia Journalism Review, little or nothing was renewed from their early days. So in fact, a number of their issues from the 1960s can freely go online, and some of them have. And it turns out there are a lot more serials like the Columbia Journalism Review than there are like the New Yorker. And we know that in part because while our library buildings were closed, our librarians used that questionnaire I showed you to research over 8,000 serials. Now, I've still got a few hundred of them left to review because regrettably the only person regularly available for expert review was me. But everything we have reviewed, we've published online as linked open data, and we have links to and from Wikidata and to Wikipedia and to any free and legal online copies of serial issues that we know about. And that's a growing corpus because digitizers like the Internet Archive and HathiTrust, as well as any independent digitizer, they have access to this information. So they can use it to make serial content available online free for all. Now, Wikipedia also has a lot of information about serials. In fact, I ran a Wikidata query and I looked for serials that had articles about them in English Wikipedia and that were old enough to potentially be public domain. And I found well over 10,000 of them, at least in part, that might be in public domain. And yeah, Penn librarians, we researched a bunch of them and I show what we found out in this table. But the majority of the serials that I found in Wikipedia don't yet have expert reviewed copyright information on them. So I hope I'm not going to regret this, but I've just taken that questionnaire we just used in the Penn libraries, and I've now made it available for all of those serials described in Wikipedia. So if you're So if you're a Wikipedian interested in documenting and freeing these serials, you can fill out this questionnaire for any serial in this table you're interested in, and I can review it and publish what you found as CC0 linked open data and link it with Wikidata. And so it'll be available to anyone who's willing and able to use it. So there's a lot of work that can be done here, but I'm hoping there are at least a few interested Wikipedians here that are interested in some of these serials, and maybe we can try working on some of these deep fact file open knowledge base and perhaps scale it up over time as we have in the Penn libraries to document and free a lot of news sources in the public domain. So if this interests you, here's links to the project and to contact me from this Wikipedia event. And you also see them in the slide here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Let's get some stuff in the public domain. All right, next up, we have Public Park.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Sharon, an artist and a designer based in Brooklyn. And today I'd love to share with you all this thought process and the result of a project I did with the foundation to create an object as like a gift for their design team back in 2022. So as a designer and artist, one of my obsessions is to document like physical nature on Wikipedia and take notes of the places where it feels kind of like a city and where one can feel embodied. So despite being like a virtual knowledge hub, there are a lot of references to physical structures and shared spaces that exist beyond the screen. So for example, the tea house that welcomes you, the village pump, the help desk doesn't need to be a desk, but it's desk. And there's an embassy. And these things kind of like filled me with joy. It's not an actual embassy and we cannot provide assistance with visas, passports, etc. But in saying that, something that was interesting to me is like even within the view history and how you see the different edits being stacked on top of each other can be kind of reflected in the city as well in terms of the buffs and how you can actually see the layers and the iconic donation pop-up and how, you know, like the fare is not $2.75 now, but the MTA, like if we think of it as like a virtual city, of course, Wikipedia never has a fare, but it's interesting to make that connection of how we're so used to, you know, these fares and how that correlates with donations. So how that kind of wraps into the Sandbox project. Let's see. So the foundation asked me to create this object, right? And I think the first couple ideas, I was kind of obsessed with trying to make it feel useful because Wikipedia is useful. Like it has to be something that people will find useful every day. But none of the ideas felt right. So for example, like a water bottle or a tote bag, a backpack, something to carry things, carry knowledge. But all of those felt a little like corporate swag you would get at a convention kind of. So I kind of went back to what I was interested in the first place and how my obsessions led to kind of creating this, not just a useful item, but something invisible, something understated to make that visible and what that looked like. So introducing the Sandbox. Oh, the access to the video. Never mind. Okay, it's all good. Well, it's okay because I have it here. So essentially like it's 5 sides. printed on a clear acrylic box, and each side has a different function, different core function of Wikipedia. So read, edit, talk, and the tildes, and history on one side. And I even created like a sandbox or a sandbag that held the sand in transport. And so this was referencing the images that were on the article sand and the Wiktionary definition. And also packaging. Oh man, okay. The access to the video isn't there, but essentially I got really excited with it's like a sandbox contains different editors. Like you have a personal sandbox, but there's also the communal sandbox. And so what does it look like to not only have sand in it? What does it look like to have something organic growing from it? And so this was a series of photographs that I took that documented this whole process. And I think that's, oh yeah, everyone gangsta until concepts become things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A real sandbox. I never thought I would see it. Yeah, so that we can fit more people in, we can skip mine. Actually, is Pharaoh's here yet? Did you want to like slot in where I was gonna go? Yeah, all right, you're on. Then we'll be back to Kristen.
Since today is about AI and about news, I thought I'd share one of the things. Well, Wikipedia often makes takes the interesting approach of defining what it is by what it's not. So one of the classic things about Wikipedia is that it's not news. It's not a newspaper. It's not a dictionary. It's all sorts of things that it's not. And people talk about, should this be on Wikipedia? Should this not Wikipedia? Is this a temporary thing? Is this something of lasting importance? And so people often say that Wikipedia is not a newspaper. It's not a documenter of current events. But I think that in many ways that it is. I think that's one of the prime things that people go to Wikipedia for. It's one of its great strengths is current events. Ever since I think it started in 2001, one of the things that happened in 2001 that made Wikipedia what it is, I think, is the September 11th attacks. It was the type of thing where people needed to learn about, at least, need to learn about topics that they were unfamiliar with on like a quick basis. And a lot of projects like Wikipedia started off in certain ways, but they didn't all take. And one of the reasons it took, because I think because sort of that ongoing world historical event had the necessity of things like Wikipedia. I wanted to, so everyone is, I'm sure, familiar with the front page of Wikipedia. Sorry, I'm not used to Australian scrolling. So here's our famous in the news. This is a infamously troublesome part of the front page of Wikipedia. If you've ever been part of it, been part of its regulation in the past, it's famously slow. It's famously awkward. Things tend to be up there for like several months. There's a lot of debate about people who die, their obituaries. Who should we put there? Should we not put there? Is this American actor compare to this Russian actor? Compare to this this statesperson? Things like that. But it is very important. A lot of people read this and a lot of people contribute to it. And even though it's not super well developed, it's an important part of Wikipedia. And I particularly want to share one page, which I think does not get the love that it deserves, which is Portal Current Events. So this is a compilation of events of the day, news events as they're reflected in Wikipedia articles. Usually it has a bullet point, it has some news, and it has one or two sources from relatively mainstream news sources. This is an interesting news source. It's probably the most boring source of world news, but it's also a really important source of world news. It uses the Wikipedia sort of ethic or aesthetic, perhaps if you want to turn it that way, of like this sort of neutral, dry way. But it tries to be a summary of all the stuff going on in the world, and it's quite useful. And this is one of the pages that's been emergent. So this, all Wikipedia's internal pages have been like going down over the years. This has actually been going up. I think people found it useful, when there's all sorts of different opinions on things like social media, different, people of different orientations. This has actually been going up. About 50,000 people a day read this. I think it could be more. I think this is a lot more potential for here. A lot of this is manually done. It's done by like awkward editors. You see a lot of IP edits on this. People who are not registered accounts, who are totally new to the project. I think if we had some AI support for something like what Google News has, finding what's the top article, what's the top stories of the day, what should we have a blurb on, where should it be cited to? I think this could become a really important source. And as AI makes search engines sort of obsolete, I think it's important that Wikipedia have things like this portal and other portals could be a good potential place, because we want to become a destination, not just something that we reach through like third-party corporate tech giant. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for all your help organizing the conference, by the way. Give him a hand for that too. Great. All right. Next up, we have Roy Smith with a surprise.
So it turns out I've been working for like a while on I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling down here to get to the right section. Anyway, just by pure coincidence, my first featured article hit the front page today, and I just could not resist the opportunity to steal 30 seconds of your time to gloat or something. But it is a little bit of disinformation to call it my featured article. These are the people who reviewed it over various processes over the years. So it's as much theirs as it is mine. So thank you very much.
All right. Congrats on the featured content. And shout out to Epic and Eddie, who I know are here, and maybe others. Lego with the overview of the picture of the year.
Hi, everyone. I feel like there hasn't been enough discussion about photos today, so I wanted to talk about the annual Picture of the Year contest that we hold. So early last year, we ran the 2022 Picture of the Year contest, and in a month or two, we'll be running the next version of it. And I kind of just wanted to like highlight some of the photos that I think are kind of gorgeous. And even if you're not good at writing, which was like a really big struggle for me for quite a while, if you can snap a photo, you can take a lot. And some of these photos are like, in my opinion, gorgeous. And some people, will spend like months trying to get the right photo. Like this person said they took like 3 weeks, and each day they like checked the weather and the lighting and everything before they actually like snapped the photo. And then other times the bug just pops out at the exact right moment and you snap the photo with no like real planning whatsoever. And the thing that I really like about this is there's a lot of people who like, sell their photos for money, but all of these people have given up, the copyright to their photos and released them on Commons on Wikipedia Commons for anyone to use. Some of them require attribution, some of them don't, but really this is like, like really great media that anyone can use, and a lot of these photos, end up in lots of places. And so voting in the contest is super easy. If you've made at least 75 edits by the past year, then you can vote for photos, and there'll be like banners all over Wikipedia that tell you when it's time to vote. And if you haven't made 75 edits, you should make 75 edits this year, so that way you can vote next year. Commons runs 75 edits just all across Wikipedia projects. you know, each year they're very different. They're like things that represent like what's going on in the world, like the COVID photos, you know, the Notre Dame burning, the spire burning, and some of them are just like people like trains. And so there's always so much going on. And Jim is in the room. If you look at a photo of a New York City thing on Wikipedia, there is like a 50% chance that Jim is the one who took it. And I think Ryan is in the other room right now, and he loves taking bird photos. And so like a lot of the New York bird photos are his as well. And I just take my phone and take photos of things. And there's a cool app called, well, it's just a website called Wiki Shoot Me. It has a bad name in retrospect, but you just give it access to your location and it will pull up like the places on Wikipedia and Wikidata that are like geotagged as they have coordinates near you but have no photo associated with them. And so, you know, when you're out somewhere, when you're traveling somewhere, you just pull it up, see what needs being photographed, and you just, you know, walk past it, take your photo and upload it, and boom, you've contributed and expanded the depths of free knowledge and free content. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Lego. All right. Next up, I believe we have user side pocket.
Oh boy. Hello, make sure the mic works. I'm going to try to make this as brief as I can because funny enough, part of the reason why I was so late coming down here today is because I had a completely different topic to do as a lightning talk. And then at the last minute, I found out that there was a link embedded inside of a video from the Wikimedia France organization that they didn't link to their actual Wikipedia, which made my entire talk valid. So here's my 10 seconds of just so we can be a franchise organization, even though they do amazing work. So this is why I reloaded the page, because I believe, yep, here's my updated talk. So here we go. So I promise this is not any form of shilling. I'm going to open up a quick new tab, but I have been involved in a lot of hackerish things over the years. Can't type for crap. Gonna do a Google search. Yes, that's exactly what I meant. There we go. So one of the recent things that I joined is this amazing group called Hack Manhattan. Trust me, it's going to get relevant. It's a hackerspace in Manhattan on 37th Street, just recently moved from 14th Street. And we do many, many sort of projects there. And provided that Elon Musk hasn't completely screwed everything over, yes, he has. So I'll just verbally describe it. And this is why Mastodon is a way better platform, I might add, as long as Wikipedia. But one of the amazing projects who I really wish could be here doing this talk, I hope to bring them to a future Wikidata thing, is we have a member named Ellen and Clyde. We're working with a bunch of people around the world because essentially there are a ton of phones in Japan from the early to mid 2000s. All of their software is proprietary. Most of these companies, even if they want to preserve the software on them, have lost those employees, have lost that source code. And basically, there's a ton of both phone software, especially video games on those phones, that have been absolutely lost until the end of time. There's a great sort of article about it that I'm not going to read through because it goes on forever. And these two, along with a ton of people around the world, have been basically in cracking the encryption on these phones and reverse engineering them in order to preserve all of this software. And it's a huge undertaking. And I wish I could show you the live stream they did at one point, which showed in real time cracking the phone, which I think took about like 4 days straight. But there's an even more important thing that's also a giant mess, and that is there is an actual wiki for this. And there's a combination of that we have a ton of data that they've been working on for these phones that are an absolute organization mess. Even the templates to create these sort of articles is literally in beta. And so they desperately need some like expert people on Wikimedians to help. In fact, I just recently read that since yesterday, they migrated over to a new URL, which made the previous URLs unrenderable. So they're trying to do forward links. They need all the help they can get with the combination of the software cracking team. So even if you're not an amazingly advanced hacksaw, in addition to actually getting the data, sorting the data is a big deal. So I personally open everyone to this project again. I hope I can get my fellow cohorts who I hope I did a decent justice of a job describing the project because it's really mind-blowing. But hopefully at a future Wikimedia Day, I can bring them here to talk all about this. But in the meantime, you can again go to this. It's a long URL. It's like kitawiki.muriz.org. I have no idea about it. But if you want a more simpler thing, and yes, unfortunately, we are stuck on the Discords. Here's the website, that QR code. If you scan that, I promise it's not a man in the middle of attack. It goes directly to Discord. And in that, there's a subsection called Japanese phone. So you have any questions about it, all of that is consolidated into that section of Discord. I'm going to leave it up there until they erase it here. I'm Side Pocket. Happy Wikimedia Day. I hope all of you stay safe out there and hack the planet. Peace.
Thank you, Side Pocket. All right, next up we have Rosie Step with a cryptic acronym themed talk.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to talk about a fictional character called Harry Seldon in the fictional universe that Isaac Asimov created decades ago, the Foundation series. Harry Seldon was a psychohistorian by profession. He analyzed large data sets in order to predict how humanity would fare in the future. And by so doing, he was able to determine that the future would include 20,000 years of doom, unless he made some changes. And one of the changes that he made was to sequester a group of scientists in a far-off distant planet in the galaxy, whose mission was to write the Encyclopedia Galactica, an encyclopedia that contains the sum of all human knowledge. While this is an oversimplification of Harry Seldon and his work, it serves this purpose. For about a decade now, all of my wiki work has been done with this thought in mind. What would Harry Seldon do? And I wear this purple bracelet, WWHSD printed on it, that is a reminder, and it helps steer my work in a direction that hopefully will be helpful to the world and to avoid areas where there's potential for doom. So why talk about this here today? Each of us has our own backstory regarding our first or early edits. And thank you, Annie. I don't know if you're in the room now, but for giving that some attention today. But why do we keep editing? I read the Foundation series a long time ago, and it certainly had an effect on me years later when I became a Wikipedian. WWHSD drives me to keep editing and organizing and working on strategic and governance and bias issues within the Wikimedia movement. What drives you?
Great. Thank you very much, Rosie. And then next up, we have Commander Dan.
Hi. 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 I just want to thank Annie also for bringing up our histories and past. Although I started editing in 2006, I learned the word wiki from television, educational television, CBS specifically, Hawaii 5-0, where I also learned tsunami in the 70s. And I guess I'd also be remiss if I didn't go wish happy birthday to Martin Luther King and my father, who share a birthday today, neither of whom are here today. But what I'm here to talk about is pictures, like Kunal talked about, and judgments, and what I may be guilty of making assumptions and categorizing things. I mean, I admit that I was adding photos that had people wearing lapel pins to people wearing lapel pins categories. And it struck me that a lot of these things are gendered by men and women, and but there are a few transgender categories, but they're relatively few. So I'm just concerned that our assumptions of how do you open new tabs here? Whoops. Of generalizing or stereotyping photos into men and women, and somehow some people are making transgender. So the parent category of adult humans is voluminous. I don't know how to summarize this and can account for everything, but the man is here, and a man is an adult human male. I guess that's, I don't know, is that a valid definition these days? Anybody think yes, no? What do we think for no? Anybody? It's got its conflicts. Okay. As do women. But there are a whole bunch of categories that seem to make these assumptions about the people in the pictures. And I don't have a solution here. I'm just trying to bring our attention to it and expose the problem. Now, the use case of this, however, if you're looking for photos, you're making some brochures, some artwork, you want to look as a photo editor through pictures. So I think these stereotypes, that may be the best use case for stereotypes, is when you're seeking things that fit a certain category. Otherwise, stereotypes certainly are a losing proposition. That's really my complete lightning talk in a nutshell. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you, Commander Dan. We had somebody post a lightning talk and then revert it. I assume they didn't actually want to. Do you want to give a lightning talk, or are you good? All right, JB with
Yeah, so hello, my name is JB. I'm not an expert in Wikipedia at all, but I just want to highlight some of the differences I've seen, because I'm also a bit active in another community that's popular actually in Korea. So NamuWiki is like a Wikipedia style that's predominantly in Korean. And one thing, it's like they have their own moderation, stuff like that. And I think that the biggest difference I see between the Korean wiki and this NamuWiki is that this is very humor focused. People make side remarks here and there. A lot of it, you get a lot of fun just reading some of the articles. And coming from more like an outside view coming in, I realized that for a lot of the non-English language Wikipedias, a lot of those have hard time trying to catch it, especially in Korean Wikipedia, because there's a lot of complaint when it comes to moderation, when it comes to the tone. Well, at least this alternative shows them there's a lot of humor they use, so that a lot of people start using these more fun version of Wikipedia than the Korean Wikipedia. Therefore, it's driving growth, driving engagement, stuff like that. So at least from the outside looking in, I felt that maybe for non-English ones, which hasn't matured enough as a Wikipedia compared to English one, maybe it might make sense so that more of the moderation will be loosened, so that people can make those jokes here and there, so that it might have more people to be engaged in the first place, and then slowly drive in the moderation, which is actually what's happening also to NamuWiki as well, where they're also trying to cut down a lot of the snide remarks, some jokey, sarcastic comments here and there. So that's just a thought I had, and it's not really more of a structured thesis or anything, but it's just an observation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, JB. All right, well, looks like we had time left after all, so you're stuck with my lightning talk. I have, just had a couple random things to say. I've ad-libbed all my Wikipedia talks ever, and this is no exception. So I put on 2 topics. 9 years ago into these, and a bit of about LLMs. So Pharaohs, thank you very much for letting me host these lightning talks. It was great listening to everybody. I actually wanted to look at the first Wiki conference that I went to about 9 years ago. It was the one in Barnard in 2015. And that was actually all unconference except for 2 panels. So we've definitely come a long way in our ability to fill out a schedule. And yeah, no, a lot of good memories from there. I appreciate the lightning talk crowd in particular over those 9 years because that really motivated the development work I did and all my other Wikipedia work because I was able to come here and present it to everybody year after year. So I'm happy for all the support. All right, topic 2, LMs. Very briefly, this is something actually that stuck in my mind after Side Pocket showed the wiki. At the top, if you might have noticed, the header said, written by humans only, no bots. I thought that was sort of interesting. I think Wikipedia occupies a very like part of the older web position today, and there's a lot of uncertainty in how people look at information these days in this age of like a lot of content being produced by AI. So Wikipedia sort of is currently able to occupy a position apart from that, apart from the current web where things may or may not be very reliable. And I think, you know, there is a lot of good plans to use AI to improve Wikipedia, which I think are definitely, you know, definitely helpful, have the potential to be helpful. But I would be, you know, worried that we have a bit of a public image to uphold. And if, you know, the amount of AI usage in Wikipedia like becomes a part of Wikipedia's image, I think that might, you know, affect how people view us as that, you know, place apart. Anyway, that's my talk. Thank you all so much for paying attention to these lightning talks, and have a great rest of the conference.
All right, thanks everyone. We are running a little bit behind, so we're just going to go straight into James Forrester's talk on abstract Wikipedia. While he sets up, you might want to take a stretch while we get ready. Thank you.
All right, I guess I'll get started because I know we're on schedule. Sorry for running late. All right, everybody. So I'm here to talk about abstract Wikipedia, language versus knowledge. So I've spoiled my talk a little bit by presenting earlier, a little bit unplanned. Sorry about that. Hope it's not too boring for you. So I'm James Forrester. I'm the tech lead for the abstract Wikipedia team, working for the Wikimedia Foundation. I'm really glad to be presenting here today. So I wanted to give a little bit of context around what the motivations are for wiki functions and the abstract Wikipedia dream vision here. Vision. It sounds much better than a dream, right? So vision. And so I just a kind of quick canter through, you know, what's leading us to our project and where we are with it. So we're not seeing any. You're not seeing the slides. Well, that's unfortunate. What are you seeing? You're seeing that slide instead. Well, I'll plug it in from the other end. Okay, I'm just stealing this cable instead. Now you're seeing a different thing instead. Well, that's even better. What about this? Yes. There we go. This might make more sense. Hi, I'm James. So here's the agenda. There's a bunch of reasons for why we're building wiki functions, which hopefully will resonate with a lot of people who are current Wikipedians. And there's a lot of vision for abstract Wikipedia, which hopefully will inspire and not sound boring. So wiki work, unshared. So there are a lot of Wikipedias. I mean, depending on what you count as an active Wikipedia, there are a different number, but there are over 300 Wikipedia domains in different languages that are live right now. That is a different concept of knowledge each time, but it's the same concept of the work, right? There's the creating, updating articles, there's the patrolling, all the different things that are very familiar to people who edit Wikipedia, curate Wikipedia, make Wikipedia amazingly successful. And these are the same pieces of work, whether you speak English or Urdu, whether you speak, French or Swahili, but they don't have the same size, right? English Wikipedia has 125,000 monthly contributors, roughly averaged a bit, 19,000 pages in the Lua namespace, in the module namespace, 1.5 billion speakers, about 900 million of which turn up each month. The Hausa Wikipedia has 60 monthly contributors, 500 pages in the Lua namespace, which is already quite big, 70 million speakers in the world, but only 200,000 of them show up each month. And the nature of people showing up may be different for different people. 10 hours continually reading on your desktop computer, reading 10,000 pages versus a snippet you read, on Google. We count basically those as one person. The nature of that consumption is different. So here is a screenshot from the module Lua namespace of the Malay Wikipedia. So one of the things you might notice here, so Malay is the principal language spoken in Malaysia. It is written in the Latin script. It is not, however, based on English, but all these articles, all these modules are named in English. And that's because they aren't for the Malay community. They were written for the English Wikipedia and then mostly copied across. So here is the one for age, right? And you can see it's written in English for English speakers, for English people who speak English at least pretty fluently, if not completely fluently. And in fact, if you look at the history of this article, it was imported in one great big bulk in 2017 and essentially hasn't been touched since, except one time where someone very helpfully actually translated a bunch of the labels that it would output so that on Malay wiki, it looks useful, right? And that's a great thing to do. But here's English Wikipedia's version of this, the original, if that means sense once they start forking off. It has template data. Stuff that helps you when you're using Visual Editor actually use this script, not present on Malay at all. It has a revision history with dozens and dozens and dozens of improvements, maybe good improvements, maybe bad improvements, do not exist on Malay Wikipedia. And this is replicated on 86 communities, well, 85, because English is one of them, right? Across the different Wikipedias. This is just a very simple script that takes a date and the current date or a different date and calculates how old someone was at that point, right? So it's a really useful thing for writing prose. It's a really boring thing for taking two numbers apart from each other. And it doesn't differ necessarily by different contexts. It's a thing we could share, but we currently don't have that technology. And in fact, you can look at a lot of the versions of the age module across the different Wikipedias, and the Malay example we picked because it's kind of an extreme version of this, but lots of Wikipedias have this problem, including the English Wikipedia, where people find something that worked for them on German or Arabic, they copy it over to English, localize it a bit. But the English Wikipedia also, to a much smaller extent, suffers from the problem of having modules that are kind of disconnected from the original ethos. So this is why we built wiki functions. Fundamentally, the dream for wiki functions is that you're going to have a site where you can go which has one version of this Lua script, this module, this function that works for everyone, depending on whether you're Malay Wikipedia or English Wikipedia or German or any of the others. This is still a dream, not a reality. It does not work, but it's here, right? So here is an age function. Now, forgive the screenshots. They look a bit techy. We have actually changed the design as of like 2 weeks ago. So these things are still landing. There are other things here that are really interesting, though. You'll notice under type it says Gregorian proleptic calendar date, and that is perfectly correct and perfectly unusable for almost every human on Earth. But like that's a little thing where we as a community can agree, actually, why don't we just say date, and then the other ones could say they're weird ones instead. But you can see here, you write the value 23, the month May, that's a drop down, that's not writing the word MAYE. And the positive integer 945, and you run the function, and you drop down for common era versus before the common era, and it would output a bit of text that says, how old someone was today as of that date. So wiki functions is here, you know, that function exists, but it's not here, right? So here's the front page of Wiki functions. You can go to it now. You can log in. You can create a function. And here's an example of a real function that exists also, a not function. This was one of the simplest functions someone built. You put in true, and you get back false. You put in false, you get back true. It's world-changing stuff. But the important thing here is that there's one version of that function that can be used as the basis for every bit of Boolean logic you'll use in the entire system. And this can be translated. So if I go back, you'll see here it says, takes a truth value and returns its opposite. That's the description in English. But if I click edit here, which doesn't appear because this is a slide deck, you'd be able to set it in a dozen different languages, or actually all 650, something like that, roughly languages. The concept of what a language is starts to get very difficult, and I will not pretend to answer that here. This is controlled by the community. So you'll see here, this is not, I have written the correct version of the not function, you will use it. This is written on the wiki, controlled by the wiki community on wiki functions. It has a bunch of implementations, a bunch of tests. And so here's an implementation in JavaScript that someone's written. And here's a different implementation in Python. And so the important thing here is that both of them are equally valid. We're not making decisions for the community about what language they should write in. And we have to make some decisions about what we're going to support, but we want to be open rather than make decisions for people. You can also write it, and this is the thing that we think is really important, in a composition. And so this is not a programming language. I mean, it is, but it's not somebody else's programming language. This is the wiki functions kind of way. And we hope at some point this will be something that you can actually represent visually. So you can already read it in prose. If I was logged in, however, in Polish, this prose would be in Polish. Right? It's not the most beautiful prose. You know, we're still quite techy and we want to be more welcoming. But this is in Polish. This is not in English. In fact, pretty much no words appear here that are in English at all. If you're logged in or you just went to the Polish entry through Google, you would end up thinking this website was a Polish website in Polish for Polish people. And the same theoretically is true for all 800 of our languages. So what's the status right now? So you can create functions, you create implementations, create test cases. Woohoo! You can do it with Booleans and strings, and you can do it with lists of those. More is coming soon, but we do not support things like dates or numbers yet. That's coming. What's coming later? Calling functions embedded within a Wikipedia article. So you can't actually use this as a replacement for the age module on English Wikipedia or Malay Wikipedia or any of the others coming. You can't call those functions either from tools or gadgets or third-party apps. That's a really big thing because it's not just powering Wikipedia, it's powering all the other tools across the Wikimedia universe and, you know, third parties. And you can't yet use Wikidata items or lexemes, but that's a big thing we definitely want to work on very soon. And so this comes to language versus knowledge. So if you look at Wikidata, it has a lot of structured data, statements about the world. It says Jupiter is the fifth planet, is the largest planet, it is a gas giant. It doesn't necessarily let you say things about statements. Certain forms of statements are not things you can make about things in Wikidata. It's not there yet. And yet you can, with a function, say different kinds of things. So here, this is an example function called reverse string, which takes a string and reverses it. And this has input of diputs. And if you press run function, you will get the output stupid. This is a toy example from my lead's daughter, who finds it hilarious, but she is 7. There are other examples which are still pretty toy examples. So this is an encode the NATO phonetic alphabet, right? So you type in the word wiki and it says whiskey, India, kilo, India. Obviously, we all know that, right? This isn't necessarily a thing that everyone's going to use all the time, but it is particularly relevant if you actually have an article about the NATO phonetic alphabet. And we might be able to provide readers with the ability to like run an actual example in the article as they're reading about it. So rather than try and get their head around what it means, they can explore what it means. This is still knowledge, but it's not really the kind of written form of articles that we've been generally providing on Wikipedia. There's possibly the way to make content out of this. So these are some examples that we actually created as a team, as a way of exploring what it would be to do natural language generation. So these are not templates in the Wikitext sense of the term, but they're templates in the sense of the AI sense of the term. You have some 3 inputs. and you press the button and it outputs a statement. So Berlin City, Germany, and it says Berlin is the largest city in Germany. If I change that word from Berlin to Stuttgart, it would say Stuttgart is the largest city in Germany, which might not be true. You can in fact say, Berlin is the largest city on the moon. Also probably not true. And then there's a version of this in German, and we actually wrote versions of this in a bunch of different languages to kind of explore what it is that could make this useful. This in and of itself isn't necessarily incredibly powerful, but early usage of wiki functions that's already there right now is this function here. So Wikidata has this set of content called lexemes, which are entries about words in all the different languages of the world. When you say a verb in English, generally it doesn't change very much in different forms you think. So you stand and you stood and you're standing, but there's only 3 or 4 variations. But in other languages, there can be dozens or even hundreds of stem endings of those words. And those all need to be in Wikidata so that it can automatically look up, oh, this word is probably this word in context. So this function here is a relatively simple one that gets you the nominative plural of a Finnish verb. So you type in an input and it assumes you are correct. It is a Finnish verb, noun, and it gets you the result. So you can say Van Hempe goes to Van Hammond. But, and so here is what the Wikidata lexeme entry for that would look like. So you see grammatical features, nominative singular versus nominative plural, they have different forms. And then there's also this data on Wiktionary, which is not connected to Wikidata to pull this data. It's all stored separately on Wiktionary. And in fact, each Wiktionary, so this is a screenshot from the English Wiktionary, but the French Wiktionary and the Swedish Wiktionary and the Finnish Wiktionary would each have to have their own version of this content. But here is a page which actually lets you bulk create all of these different stem endings onto Wikidata in one go, and lets you get it powered by wiki functions. So this slightly inappropriately, not inappropriately, ahead of our planning, hooks into the internal API for wiki functions and calls the wiki functions function that I just showed and outputs a whole bunch of outputs. So if I remember as a young kid trying to learn Latin and being disheartened to realize that for each irregular verb, I had to memorize 147 stem endings, which made me sad. And now a function can remember all of these for you, and I don't speak very much Latin anymore, it turns out. So that's kind of an option of where we can go with wiki functions itself. But then the bigger picture is the abstract Wikipedia vision. And so this ties back in to the kind of sample Berlin is the largest city in Germany idea. Oopsie daisy. So you can take some kind of natural language functions, really basic things. So here, this takes in a word in English and outputs the plural of it based on some smart paradigms about what words turn into what plurals in English. So baby to babies, for instance. And you can see down in the left here, plural of chair is chairs, plural of fairy is fairies. So it's not just slapping an S on the end, but it's not very clever. Long term, we'd want to pull this data from Wikidata rather than probably having functions for it. But you can also build that together. So here, this takes a person name and a place name and says Albert Einstein was born in Ulm, or James Forrester was born in London, or all those different things that you could say. And you can see how little fragments of content statements like this could be built together into a way that can actually make a really quite significant statement. So this is a piece of text that we cobbled together as a team, the natural language generation kind of volunteers in working with the team built, which is essentially the lead of the Marie Curie article it's amalgamated from a bunch of different wikis, but basically it's what you would write as the lead article. So Marie Curie has a whole bunch of statements you can pull out of Wikidata right now that are true, like when she was born. There are some interesting questions about what her nationality is that actually, if you read different Wikipedia articles about Marie Curie, you'll have a very different view as to what nation she was a citizen of, which is one of those kind of political things that becomes very difficult to put into nuance in Wikidata. But the thing that's really important here is that Marie Curie was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize. She was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry and Nobel Prize in Physics. And actually, she was the only human to win 2 Nobel Prizes in different fields, which is, not a state is a really interesting thing to say. Generally, we are going to want to say something like that in any article lead about Marie Curie. And it's also not a thing that the structure of Wikidata lets you say inside Wikidata. But with wiki functions, you could say something like this. And spoiler, this text is actually generated text from a set of what we call constructors and then renderers. The constructors construct each individual fragment and sentence, and then the renderer turns that from data into English, in this case, into Hebrew. And if you say, actually, this is wrong, you can make a typo correction. You can change, so you see Nobel Prize in Chemistry 1909, change it to 1911, and it just updates because, you know, like a Wikitext template, this is just a thing where it get data in and data out. So the plus side for that is you can update it once and it updates in all the languages. The downside of that is you update it once, it updates in all the languages. And so that has all of the moderation concerns that you have around people changing templates, all the moderation concerns you have about people changing inputs to things or things on Wikidata. And so this is not in any way a solved problem, but it's a thing that we have as a dream. So, and particularly the dream here is not that there's some magic AI is going to come along and write content. I think that's not going to happen. AI is generally based on Wikipedia, and so it can't really very helpfully write Wikipedia without going into a kind of spiral of decay. But also B, that's not who we are as Wikimedia. Like the humans in the loop are the magic pixie dust, right? It's not an accident that we have humans write Wikipedia articles. That is actually why we're here to do it. And so the idea here is that you'll have, you know, input through control from Wikimedia communities. The statements of fact will live on Wikidata, controlled by that community. The translation of statements into prose will live on wiki functions, and then the output will live somewhere. We don't know where that is, but you see here, you can just change the text here from English into, in this case, Croatian, and it magically outcomes with prose in Croatian, not English. So cool, this is a dream, this is a vision. There's a whole bunch of content written by humans that's really great. What are we going to do with this vision? Well, A, apparently I need to build it at some point. But also B, even once you've got a technology as an available thing, what do we as the Wikimedia community want to do with it? One of the things that we think might be an early win, an early place to start with this work, is Wikidata item descriptions. So if you look here, a lot of these languages don't have anything defined at all. The ones that do define are all saying the very basic thing that the University of Lagos is a university in Nigeria, except, interestingly, the ones in English and Hausa, which both mention that it's a public university in Nigeria. But that's something that a Wikifunctions kind of bot, as you could think of it, could replace those automatic statements made by individually in a per language basis by a kind of pan-language translation, still controlled by the Wikidata community. So if you change it to former university because it's now closed, they all get updated instantly, or the country of Nigeria changes its name because it you know, splits in half or doubles in size or whatever. And those will all get updated without a human having to go through each of 200 languages and manually changing the label. But that's, you know, still a bit scary, and that's just Wikidata item descriptions, right? There are other areas that are slightly less scary. So slightly more scary. So there are automatic lists. So this is a list of national capitals by population. This is an article on English Wikipedia. These are statements of fact. These are statements of fact that do not change very often, but when they change, we generally don't remember to change them in all the different places, right? If I update the article on Palau to say what the population of its capital is, and someone moved in, so it's not 0 anymore, do I also remember to go to update the entry on this table that I probably don't even know it exists? And, you know, if I went into special what links here, I'd eventually find it 500 pages down. No one's ever going to do that. And so content gets out of date, out of sync with each other. It'd be really nice to pull this all together. But that's also like real user-facing content in a way that Wikidata item descriptions are a bit out of the way. So we're not going to throw some switch, you know, mad scientist style and tough. You're going to have to deal with it. This is very much a proposal idea that we're going to work through as a community. More contentiously, even still, so infoboxes are a big area of concern. And by that, I don't just mean that different wikis have different contents in their different wikis infoboxes. You know, if you compare the article on Marie Curie in English, Polish, German, they disagree about her nationality. They also disagree about her name. But more importantly, there are things that appear in English that don't appear in German. For a long time, her signature, I think, appeared in the info box and finally got dropped a few years ago. Audrey, who's a brilliant person and is Minister for Digital Affairs in Taiwan, or at least was until the election yesterday. I don't know if that's still the case. Anyway, Audrey has a whole bunch of data about them, all stored in Wikidata, all theoretically could be automatically put into info boxes in some form using a function. But English Wikipedia, especially, more than actually I think any other Wikipedia, has a really contentious view about info boxes where it's not even agreed on the wiki as to what they should look like. And so you have some wiki projects that decided they have a different view of info boxes to other wiki projects, and they're long-running, very slow edit wars back and forth as to which edit template to use. You know, is Napoleon a monarch or is he a military figure? Because they get different info boxes, and that's really important to some people. I think it's more important that our readers get the right answers, you know, but you know, it's not for me as an individual, let alone me from the foundation, to tell the community how to run itself, right? But I might want to point out sometimes when it goes in the wrong way. Anyway, that's the kind of overview of what the idea for the abstract Wikipedia vision is. There is no plan to replace articles. That is like pointless and not a good value for anyone. But hopefully it's given you some ideas about things that we could do with abstract Wikipedia. Hopefully you're even excited for wiki functions to actually ship at some point. I am. And yeah, I have got hopefully 15 minutes now for questions if anybody has any. When does it ship? Okay. We shipped Wiki Functions itself in July last year. So that got it very early out the door. You can, at the time, only a very small number of blessed humans, you know, were given the ability to actually write functions or even run functions. We have done a lot of work on the security side, on the scaling side, so that security are happy enough with us at this point that we now allow any community member to create functions. Only approved community members, approved by the community, can actually make the function live so that other people can run them. And then once a function is approved as an alive function, any human logged out or logged in can run it by putting inputs into it. So I could go right now to the article, you know, to the entry for negate, and I could make true go to false and false go to true, and I don't need to be logged in for that. I certainly don't need any special rights. However, right, you know, a car is great inside the garage, but you actually want to drive it on the road. The thing a lot of people want to do is use wiki functions to power their apps and to power Wikipedia articles and to pull in Wikidata content. Those are big things we're focused on. As a team, we've got a meeting next week. Next week to actually decide on the kind of priorities for the coming quarter. We'll, you know, share that with the community as and when. But assuming the team agrees with me, I think we're probably going to be a big focus on types and on Wikidata usage, and a second focus on using it on Wikipedia. But it's months, not weeks, unfortunately, at best.
How can we, given the debate, and the other half is given today's information can create media. Like second one, push forward up. Like just here's the person that has a well set up data, you know, whatever reason. You just want to have a basic like, oh, I was born in 1852 and died in 1900, whatever. Like, is there any progress on that, or is that kind of like?
That's a good question. So the first thing I'll say is that ultimately Wikifunctions is a community project controlled by the Wikifunctions community, which you can be part of if you go sign up, right? You know, it's not
controlled by me. And so what functions the community focuses on and thinks are important is kind of in their control, not ours. We will kind of support them in the directions they want to go. I think the simple natural language generation concepts are actually already existing across the Wikimedia wikis in some cases, right? There's a module Lua function where you will pass it a list of between 1 and n entries, and it will say foo or foo and bar or foo comma bar comma and baz. And so that kind of templating or language generation already exists, and kind of that's a lift and shift over to wiki functions is not necessarily a thing that will take a very long time. The problem is it's very easy to come up with very naive and simple heuristics for how to describe entities like biographies or whatever, born then, died then. And they always run into the buffers of, Wikipedia is an amazing place, and it has articles about people where we don't have any of that data, right? So there are articles on, there's this wonderful standard blog that goes around the web that's, 50 lies programmers believe about names or dates or whatever, right? So we have Wikipedia articles about people we don't know the date of birth or the date of death. And sometimes we just say, there's this wonderful term, floreat, as in when they were flourishing. And so we have they published a book in 522, so they must have been alive then, but we don't exactly know whether they were alive 20 years before or after that, so we're tough. For some of them, we don't know their names. We have kind of the author of X, unknown, is, and so often there's a risk with Wikipedia work that we can let perfect be the enemy of the good. But at the same time, it's very easy to get stuck into only answering questions for English content, where frankly, there's quite a lot of that already. I'm very happy when English Wikipedia gets value out of the things we build, but the Urdu Wikipedia, the Dagbani Wikipedia, the Igbo Wikipedias are all much, much smaller and much more, the potential for helping readers is much higher there with less work. The same amount of community work could go further. So this is not answering your question at all, is it? Yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying to focus on the
Yeah.
If it just the
Mm-hmm.
here is a bare bone article based off it, then read that Urdu and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like in practice, the vast majority of the current technically minded community members in the Wikimedia movement currently speak English or German natively, or at least fluently, right? And that's not great, because there's a whole lot of communities out there that don't have one of those people sitting around who can help out. But it does mean that in practice, a large amount of the wiki functions content, which, whether it's even written by someone who doesn't speak either of those languages very well, will very early on get English and German versions. And so I'm pretty confident that very early on it will be usable for English content. I just worry about using that as the benchmark to aim for, because I think we may aim at the wrong things by building that. But I want to build it soon, so people use it and tell us what actually works and doesn't work, and then we can course correct then, rather than endlessly building kind of castles in the sky of my mind about what does and doesn't work without it validating it in the real world. I like to say that, until the user is using it, all software is vaporware, and this is more vaporware than most. Other questions? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is kind of one of the things I put my hand on the scale for. So early on in the vision of abstract Wikipedia, we said it was multilingual, and we said both multilingual in terms of natural languages, but also programming languages. And so the question was, we've currently got 2 programming languages. Why 2? Why these 2? So the 2 we have are JavaScript and Python, specifically QuickJS version ECMAScript 2020 and Rust Python 3.11 alpha off the top of my head. Why those two is because those are the two that we could build into a WebAssembler compact profile enough to us to ship into production. Why two is because when we originally planned it out, we were going to ship with one. And I said, if we ship with one, that means we ship with none, because we'll say, oh, we'll add a second one later, and we'll have built everything around the idea of having only one. It's very easy. Even when you promise yourself you're going to add support for two, if you don't actually ship with two, you don't ship with two, the ability. So that's why we shipped with two. Those two in particular are just because those are the two really easy programming languages that community members, general people on the web understand and use, and that we can wrap together. We're definitely not planning to restrict it to just those two. So one of the things we want to support is different versions of the same programming language. So Python 3.11 versus 3.10 versus 3.12. And so as new versions of Python come out, new runners will be available. Community members will get a notification saying, hey, this function you're watching doesn't actually run on the new version of Python. Do you want to update it so it does, or add some more tests or whatever? We also want to support other programming languages. The very easy, obvious answer of the next programming language for us to add is Lua. The problem with that is that lots of people at Wikipedia already use Lua, but they use MediaWiki Lua, which is kind of a fork and a dated fork of Lua. And I think we would need to do a fair bit of work to explain to people what is and isn't in scope for those things. Because, for example, there's lots of functions that are disabled in MediaWiki Lua because they have security issues, whereas we have a security box that, touch wood, means we wouldn't need that. But in return, MediaWiki Lua injects a whole bunch of useful functions and framing devices that we wouldn't make available. And so people be like, well, hang on, why does it work here and not here? And it'd be a complicated migration. Other people have asked if we can add things like Rust or Go. Those are exciting languages. Probably pretty easy from a technology point of view for us to support, but possibly pretty hard from a kind of community understanding, especially someone wanted C++, which means we have to then compile into objects. Those objects now to live somewhere. They need to cache them and expunge them in a different way. And then the community are like, well, hang on, which version? I looked at revision X, but you're running revision Y. That kind of stuff is even more confusing when it's not a literally take this text and run it in the interpreter. We will not support every language forever. Languages have a life to them nowadays, a life cycle of languages coming in, languages going out. In a different hatted me, just disabled node 16 running in the CI system for Wikimedia. Things like that are going to happen for wiki functions to keep running. And so that means it's not good enough to do a fire and forget. People have to keep their functions, their implementations updated for new versions of languages, new community requests and requirements. And so building not just someone got a notification in their watch list, but actually an active curation dashboard for these are the functions lots of people are using. These are the things that are really slow. And if someone could make a faster version, that would be great. Or these are the versions where it's in Python 3.7, that's end of life. So please migrate it to a newer version. That'd be good. So that's kind of a bunch of things in my thoughts around language support, but we're not fixed on a particular language. Okay, good. I think I can take one more question if anyone's got them, or we can just end. Oh, yeah.
So thinking about this as like the next step.
Yeah.
So I find that new editors also
Mhm.
when they come from that and think about, okay, this other site, it's hard to explain how it works.
Yeah.
So think about an article that comes from wiki function. Seems like that's another level of hard to explain to people who are not programming.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I think we already do a really poor job as a movement of explaining the provenance of content to users, right? You're looking at an article and the text is from the article, except the bits of text that are from a template, except the bits of text that are from Commons, except the bit of text that are from Wikidata, except the bit of text that are actually interpolated by a Lua script between 3 of these different sources. And we kind of just like, oh yeah, it's Wikipedia, go with it. adding wiki functions adds a fourth layer to that. And I agree, if this isn't already the straw that breaks the camel's back, this is definitely risking that. And I think, I mean, not just for editors, but for readers, like we probably need to do a good job of explaining, why should you trust this? Why should you believe this? How do you know where this comes from? And I think, and this is a bit larger scale than just wiki functions, but I think we're probably going to want to do something like badging sourced content from different sources with little icons or little last updated flags or whatever, things like that, so people can understand, at least to some extent, as they're reading it and looking at it, where it comes from. On the editing side, even more so, we're going to have to do a really good job of onboarding people, hand-holding them through, what does it mean when it says their age is 39? Didn't they have a birthday this morning? It should say 40. How do I fix that? And like what ultimately you need to find out is, oh, it was cache and it will be fixed in an hour, right? But that's like arcane Wikimedia stack knowledge that humans shouldn't ever have to learn. I ideally shouldn't have to learn, but certainly editors should not have to learn that. And so if we're doing things like that, then we need to, I don't think we probably want to turn the read mode into an edit mode where there's a little edit box, and if you click into it, magically you're not editing Wikipedia, you're editing Wikidata or editing wiki functions or whatever. But we do need some way of learning that there is a kind of through line between how the content gets to your page, and maybe like demonstrating the little pipelines or something, like automatically diagramming the content flows that end up with content being shown to you. Might be something to explore. But I am now freelancing way outside my team's work. And the web team may have views as to me saying this publicly. So, hey, did that answer that question? Cool. All right. I think that's us at time. So thank you all very much. And hopefully this was interesting, or at least not too shocking or worrying. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a 15-minute break, and then we're coming back for a sort of conference wrap-up, the wiki cake, and a group photo. So please hang around. Thank you.
Yeah.
Marie Curie's signature is still there.
Yeah.
It's still there. Is it gone? No.
No. Okay.
It's on my phone, so I can't see what what other pages might be on.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Okay.
Why, we don't want dead people's signatures?
Well, I
Metal versus presidential metal. Just knowing that. I know I did my but like it wasn't written, but it was program generated. It was program generated. A letter around the contract with the like it was really a war, it couldn't be a war. So for example, remember yes, but they do not election but not okay. But the divorce rate is 1 and the win place in Turkey and all. All right. But I don't think first child. Yeah, it's not. Yeah. The first person there is Everett. Yeah, so it's like found the all. Yeah. And I think first yeah, whatever, the award, the county award. Yeah. Right. Like, yes, you know, there are 5 people on that one more than 8 gold medals. Like, oh, that is right. You know, I'm from more than anybody. Right. Right. And the question is temporal. Yeah. Whatever reason. How do I do this? Let me see if it's there. Oh, you can. Whereas drawing this out for the money that you build. Oh. I learned that. I finished. Depends on how you look at it.
You should say all the language, right? But I don't understand what it says here. Language, multiple language?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the cop out. Yeah, because if we had two languages, we would actually. You can never each one? Yeah. Because we did. So, for example, we have all kinds of things. Well, that was one thing, our left brain west New York high school, right? And so, like, the truth that we actually want to help. So it's not because there's too many. Yeah. Have some very questionable language. Probably lead on that. Yeah. Yeah. Who believes in this American English? Standard English. Have zeros in English. I talk to the administrator. He doesn't speak it. It's all nonsense. Well, it's a really spoken on top of well, recently we have on the MIT. Almost nearly 1,000 species in the United States. And I'll look at it like things named after them. Somebody said, no, there are too many. We don't want to enumerate all of them. Yeah. I want to see them a couple of times. There are 976, not here. Yeah. There is it's such a thing as too trivial as actually like people with yeah, okay, but I want to know who's got more speech than everyone, JFK or MLK? Like, then and there's a problem with name and function. Then theoretically you should just be able to do a query to get that. Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. So no human right. No, well, somebody's saying we don't want to do it all. It's something very very right? But that is let's go to that is like the old joke, don't put too much water. Yeah. Ed Asner retiring as managing over there. Don't put too much water. You have to take a long off. There's more water, more water. No, he said you can't put too much water. No, you can't put too much water. Yeah.
I was gonna say, feel free to escape, but funny you mentioned like people who don't know about it. We know there's 4 different data items, which are taken. You also have like hypothetical person, maybe fictional. Yeah, fictional.
You know, so you know, there's these great tools that go walk through the data and Wikidata to try and work out this data problem. And what's a really problematic thing is that people start putting in lineage for like control systems, right? So like, and there's lots of sector and you follow that data all the way through, although each individual link makes sense, ultimately, and you end up saying that this second is descended from the fourth, because the Norwegian king said that he was the grandson of Thor, and you're like, okay, and then that means that like he said, alert, fictional person was meant to be parent of a factual person, and you're like, yeah, but that's not a problem in the Wikipedia, it's a problem in reality. Yeah.
That imperial path.
What's next?
Final session. It is. What's that?
Used to teach it.
I used to teach it many years ago.
You remember this room at the library?
Yeah, and it had like a whole file back there.
Yeah.
With clippings
Yeah,
and everything.
I remember.
Oh, is that right?
All the clippings. I actually used to work there in '88.
Is that right?
I was the one that tore those clippings for a minute.
Oh my God. Remember all the wood grain that was in this building? It was all wood and everything.
Oh, yeah, the other room, yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
So guys, why is TJ outside?
TJ,
Thomas Jefferson.
I don't know.
Oh, well, I heard that it may not be out there that long.
He's there now, so I don't think he gave money for the, I mean,
Oh, no, he
I'm
definitely
just
didn't give
wondering
money.
why.
It's a good question. I don't know what his formal relationship is.
I have no idea. I mean, I worked on campus for 5 years. I went to the library school.
Oh, is that right?
Where is it? The library school, the library school.
It closed in '90. It was in the main library over there.
Right. Now it's just, is it School of Information or still libraries?
No, they shut it down.
Yeah, it's no longer library school.
They shut it down.
Most library schools either
just-
shut down or went to
Right.
School of
That was just,
Information.
right, Cal, was this Cal start?
Right,
Yeah,
Berkeley,
yeah.
a lot of other places,
I think
Michigan.
it's part of a reason session coming up.
Right.
Library had renovated.
Really?
Because they really want to work it up. We're gonna do that, we'll have to move the library school out.
Right,
So, for $1 million, and no, we're not doing it.
right, right.
When did they build that facility in, you know, NYPL, Columbia?
Oh, the recap?
Yeah, yeah. Was that the 2000s or 90s?
2000.
Well, I haven't been there.
Well, I've seen.
I've seen pictures
of it, and it's a great resource.
Oh, yeah.
If I go to NYCL, I want a book store.
Right.
See art, give it to.
I think I was trying to, I'll also need to write an article about that, because it shouldn't be the one sentence, you know? But I called some things up from the place. The next day they were at 42nd Street.
Good.
I remember the old archives someplace on the west side. I'm like, oh, this, I guess that's the place.
No, but it's pretty well organized.
Oh, yeah.
So real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, good.
Very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's Harvard, Columbia, Cornell's in there. You know,
Yeah, but I think Harvard has still some of their own tech.
Harvard's in there though, too.
Yeah, well, they're in there.
Harvard's where it's largest.
Right, right. They'll have some on campus and nearby. Sort of. Now, the Cornell article. Something like this, someone will do this.
Oh, there's Rosie. So no, we're gonna have you on stage.
Sure.
Yeah.
I had a chance.
Unbelievable. Oh, yeah, yeah. Have you seen her show?
No, I haven't. I've seen about it.
We saw her today.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, she's, incredible job.
No, definitely reflect on that.
Yeah, it's.
Like, we were like, journalistics, like,
Humor is much more powerful than journalistic. No, for sure, I really admire her.
But I don't want to say it's me, it's me being negative. Everything else. That's why. Yeah. Like that.
Okay, we can start.
Yeah, is the broadcasting?
Is the what?
Is it broadcasting?
I don't know.
Because I think it, I was told that it wasn't broadcasting anymore, so.
Oh, so you better, I don't know how it works, so.
It's just, it's Zoom, so I don't know. Start video. Is it recording? No, it's not recording. Stop recording. Well, someone turned off recording, but. Oh, yeah, I just turned it on.
Okay, great. But what do we do with the screen share? Is it showing screen?
I don't know.
It's only using this camera. We want to use the other cameras? Oh, here we go. USB capture HDMI. Let's see. There we go. Richard, is that it? Richard, there we go. I think that works. I don't know if we need to share the slides.
Okay.
Hello, testing.
Up here first. We're gonna start with people on stage. Here. The other mic, or we might just pass on with 4 mics, 5 mics. Good.
Hello?
All right.
Hello?
All right, welcome to the final session for Wikipedia Day. Woo! Thank you for staying with us the entire day. We really appreciate it. We know that Sunday on a long weekend is not the most perfect time for Wikipedia Day, but it shows how much you folks care about learning about Wikipedia, and so glad to see so many familiar and new faces. So we thought for the final session today, we'd love to have a conversation with Noam Cohen and some of our panelists that we've had throughout the day, because we've had a lot of catch up with folks. We've heard a lot of new ideas. AI looms large in our conscience now in 2024. I thought it'd be really interesting to hear some of the reflections of the speakers that we've had this Wikipedia Day, but especially starting with Noam Cohen. And originally we were going to have Noam in one of the earlier sessions, but we thought Noam, if you don't know him, has been for many years kind of like the Wikipedia correspondent, which is not a common thing to hear of, but he used to come to all of our Wikimania conferences, which is our international conference, and cover Wikimania as part of his job with the New York Times and as a tech correspondent. So we always appreciated the care and the thoughtfulness that Noam put into understanding our community and always seeming to have his finger on the pulse of what was going on that particular year when you saw us at Wikimania. So I thought maybe we could start with some of Noam's reflections on being here today, and I haven't seen Noam in many years, and we used to talk all the time given his coverage of our events. But in 2024, Noam, what are some of your thoughts about seeing this community here in New York and what you see as trends in the tech industry?
I mean, thanks for inviting me. I'm really, honored to be here, and it was a really nice introduction. The thing I would say,
Recording in
I think
progress.
the first Wikimania was in 2006 that I went to in Boston, and it was like a revelation because basically it was seeing all the people behind the articles. It's so easy to see Wikipedia as just, a bunch of text and people writing notes, and to actually see the people that did it was like mind blowing to me. And it kind of made me realize it's a vibrant community, and it has it has its various figures. Jimmy Wales was always a fascinating figure to me. Like, well, sometimes they call him benevolent dictator. Was he loved or feared, revered? It was always like, it seemed like a organic community. And I was just talking to Annie, Depths of Wikipedia, and how like in a lot of ways she feels this role as like a storyteller for the community. And it's just very organic community. Wikipedia's people. That's like the story I would say from the start I always wanted to tell about Wikipedia. So cut to 2024, we're talking about AI. And, I think of like AI not being about people. So I kind of think it's missing the story. Now, maybe I'm going to go down in history as just like, missing the big story of the world and like not getting it. But what Wikipedia is giving, what is special is that it is people. It is people making decisions. And like, I know why people consult the chatbots and ChatGPT. It's helpful. It can help you write things quickly. It definitely can save time on questions, but fundamentally, it isn't a source for truth. And so I think the story I think of Wikipedia in 2024 is that we have I would say almost like a new Cold War between people who believe in truth and people believe in controlling truth. And a story I've been working on about Russia and how in Russia, right, I wrote a story for Bloomberg in the summer about how Russia is Putin has always hated Wikipedia for many, many years. And he, recently the government sponsored a commercial rival. It's a legal fork of Wikipedia. They hired away the head of Wikimedia Russia to run it. Lots of funding they're getting. And they've also been, prosecuting Russian Wikipedia and there've been fines. And lately, the most recent thing that happened, which I think is worth taking note of, is that the person who replaced the Russian Wikimedia person who went to the commercial operation, somebody named Stanislav Kozlovsky, he's a professor who lost his job over this now. He was fearing that he's going to become a foreign agent, being listed as a foreign agent. And Wikimedia Russia's closing down, basically. It hasn't happened yet, but they're filing the paperwork because they really feel like it's jeopardizing anyone who's involved with it. So, if you count Putin and you count, Xi in China, where there isn't, Wikipedia is not allowed to publish in any language. Modi in India, there are lawsuits that are related to what Wikipedia publishes. You can throw in Trump and the right wing in America. There is a war on truth. And it's kind of, I don't want to overstate it, but Wikipedia kind of becomes the only kind of rival. There are definitely news organizations that are committed to the truth, but they're commercial operations. And, this idea of a global community that somehow is working in the shadows, that is trying to create a record of what is happening and it is accurate is really, really important. And I feel like it is reaching a level that's beyond just sort of utility, but about are we going to be able to democratically tell our story, or is it really under threat? So in some ways, I feel like the AI story takes away from that, because AI is about just harvesting data and making predictions and doing lots of things that are useful, but really not getting at the nub of what is truth on the internet? Who gets to tell it? Who's guarding it? How are we going to protect it? These are the real big issues there. So that's what I would sort of see the takeaway and what's really at stake in 2024 and Wikipedia and the movement. So that's why I really like to write about it. So the things I'm writing about are about the Russian story. Similarly, I think the other thing I was telling Andrew when he listed his 4 principles, I really feel like the 5th principle of assume good faith is really, really important. And that's a community-based idea. And I remember Jimmy Wales saying something which I thought was really deep, which he said, you could be at a steak restaurant and everyone's given a steak knife. And you'd be like, oh my God, there are people with knives right next to me. What's going on? Everyone should be in a cage. That way I'll be safe. Or you could take the view no, people don't use steak knives to attack each other, and that's cool. And so I think that principle that Wikipedia works on of assuming good faith is huge. And the other story I've been working on is about how Wikipedia, English Wikipedia, has been writing about the Hamas, the war in Israel, the Israel-Gaza war. And the fact that there is a community there that is a lot of tension, a lot of accusations, a lot of people even being disciplined, I would say, over it. But fundamentally, it is forcing everyone in this conflict. If you support whatever, if you're more on the Israeli side, you are forced to have to work on an article that's going to talk about all the things Israel has done violating international law, or fill in the blank. Likewise, you're on the other side, you have to deal with the atrocities that happen. It's you cannot tunnel yourself that way. There are not 2 versions of the story. They're not, there's a quote I saw of Orwell where he said basically he really got disillusioned in the Spanish Civil War because he felt like the media and was contaminated. That you could never believe anything from the other side, even just basic facts. And he felt that was really dangerous. Even though he was very committed to the Republican movement, he felt like we should be able to believe that our side did things wrong. And that's, to me, again, that's the innovation of Wikipedia. We have a system in America often that's conflict based, and where 2 sides, antagonists, our legal system works that way. Often our our political system works the way two people make bold, outrageous claims. Oh, the truth will be in the middle. You know, that's sort of our logic. So yes, both sides in a lawsuit should just say extreme things and be ungenerous and interpret things the way they want, and then we'll get the truth in the middle. But no, I think a better system is to have everyone committed to trying to do the best, and like we all check each other, and we're like in one project pulling together. So like, I think that's the other very valuable thing that Wikipedia does. It's like, it has these huge problems with bias, and that makes it really sad because this great model is hurt by not having enough inclusivity. And like the story about Israel Hamas I'm working on is about the Egyptian American editor who feels definitely outnumbered, and how, and I was interviewing like great length about how does he deal with it? How does he deal with the stress? What keeps him going? How frustrated is he? I mean, like, I want to tell those stories too, because it's like Wikipedia needs to reflect the world much better to do this important job. But I feel like the basic parameters are really useful. So that's why I have optimism about it, but I feel like the stakes are very high, and I feel that's why I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. No, that's great insight. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think you noticed something that Sri Srinivasan mentioned this morning as well in terms of contamination. He was worried about India and their media ecosystem, and I think we're all worrying about how good is the source, how good is the sourcing that we have to put into Wikipedia, right? It's garbage in, garbage out. We need to have good, reliable sourcing. So I think it's a great segue, because I asked the panelists up here before they came up, and we put this into the Etherpad. So I encourage you folks to participate as well. I know it's a little bit tough in Etherpad to do this, but we actually have left some space in there. So I pretty much gave 3 prompts. The first prompt is, what excites you about the future of Wikipedia or Wikimedia? What concerns you about the future of Wikipedia or Wikimedia? And then fill in the blank. In 20 years, Wikipedia will be ... right? Pretty open-ended, but I think we got a really interesting range of things. I'd love to start with Sherry, because it hits exactly on what you said about bias and how contaminated or how good quality are the sources that we have. And Sherry, maybe you could explain a little bit what we talked about before. It's something that concerns us a lot, because you have worked with AfroCrowd and trying to make sure that there is a good representation of history that has been forgotten in many ways. What concerned you about the future of Wikipedia in terms of, you know, how AI is being used these days, and that we are training all our AI systems on Reddit, on Wikipedia, but if we don't have a good Wikipedia, what good is training it on there, right?
Okay. So I was thinking that when we were talking earlier that Wikipedia is such a central, okay, for me, Sherry, speaking as myself, for me, Wikipedia has always been the central nervous system of our lexicon, because of the organic way that the material that we ingest, digest, reproduce, add, and grow, it really mimics it mimics an organism that's ever changing, evolving with the world. Everything human is flawed, but I think for the world understanding of itself, they go to Wikipedia, they go to knowledge from people who care about knowledge, even if it's a passing thing and you're like, you know, I want to share this. So what we know about the world is what AI knows about the world, in part, in a large part, because a lot of the information that we that Wikipedia and Wiki projects actually produce is the data that the world is digesting. And now even more so because of AI, it's even more important than ever before. The way that that algorithms are trained, or that the knowledge that goes in and is being used, not just obviously from Wikipedia, but from the entire internet, a large chunk of that I do believe is Wikipedia. So at the foundation of that information are a lot of the people in this room, and in the general, wiki body. So therefore, the information that's produced from within the community and the hive mind of the community is really rising to an apex of importance for going forward for our understanding of history, of ourselves, of the world, and so forth. So it's even more important than ever before that more voices are heard, more perspectives are included, so that that bias on whatever level it is, because there are different levels of bias, systemic bias, there's different kinds of ways that you can look at bias. But at the same time, we have a very interesting place that we're at, because number one, we're here and talking about it, and coming up with ways of approaching it so that it's even better than before. So the better the information is coming from this huge chunk, important, influential chunk of root information for AI going forward, the more important everyone in this room is, and what this group of this global body is doing. But it also means that there's more impetus and more onus on us to ensure that we don't back down on improving that information, but we go full force forward ahead and really work on it even more so.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, there was something that we haven't really talked about at all in this conference is there actually is a Wikimedia movement strategy process that we are implementing. And one of those goals is knowledge equity, right? So nothing about us without us. We want to have many folks involved, more than we see today. And Rosie, one thing you wrote about and what excites you is related to this as well, the ability to morph ourselves into the galactic. And I didn't notice until you put galactic future, probably referring to your lightning talk today in terms of your point there. But tell us a little bit about what you're thinking about, what excites you about Wikipedia.
Right. So there's been a question in the last year that some people have been asking, is Wikipedia just the encyclopedia of our generation? And the next generation will have another encyclopedia, just like there was the Encyclopedia Britannica, and no one contributes really to it anymore. And so I think I am the eternal optimist, and so that may in its own way influence what I'm going to say, but I see Wikipedia as having the potential for becoming the Encyclopedia Galactica, in that, when we move off of this planet and populate other planets in the galaxy, that, we will extend ourselves that far away into the future. I make that point only to say that I think the only way that this can happen is if we are willing as a movement to change. If we are not willing to change with the times, if we are not willing to see how AI can be used in a thoughtful way that works for us, if we draw lines in the sand and say, this is the policy on notability and we are not going to change it, and it's been the same policy that was written 2 decades ago, if we are not willing to make changes in so many different ways, then we are going to go the way of the dinosaur and we will become obsolete. And so if we become obsolete, how do we attract new editors? How do we get, you heard me talk about, 7 out of 10 readers are men, that in itself kind of like, really? Yeah, that's really true. So for me, it's about change, being willing to change, being willing to accept ambiguity in how we deal with change like AI. I am not the expert here on that, but I know that we must understand it better and see how to harness it, because otherwise we will become Encyclopedia Britannica and something else will come out from society and become the new kind of global encyclopedia.
Right. Thank you. And Annie, I love your comment because we're all focusing on the nuts and bolts and you bring it back to the people. So I think that's also what Noam appreciated, is that you're kind of our resident ethnographer in many ways of the community. Tell us a little bit more about what excites you.
Well, I wrote it up there. Every time I come to one of these things, I meet someone, they say their username, and I'm shocked that they're like extremely young. There are people that I have worked with on Wikipedia who were born after 2010. They're half my age, and I'm not even that old. I feel so inspired and excited that even today in 2024, there are a lot of really bright, really like socialized. There are all these fears. The kids are not okay. I think that many of them are okay, and they're still finding Wikipedia and they still really like it. That's what makes me happy.
Great, thank you. And please, folks, keep adding stuff. I love seeing the stuff that you're adding here, even if we don't get to read them all. I love having this as a kind of a record of what we're thinking in 2024. So let's go to some of the concerns. But you also say, Annie, that you also recognize that we're kind of not necessarily assuming good faith and doing the best to welcome new folks, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have met people here today even that have felt a little bit bad that some of the articles they submitted to Articles for Creation did not get accepted. And I hope that there is no guilt in that, even though it's hard to not have guilt. Yeah, when you meet people in person and you see the humanity of Wikipedia, it's easy to bounce back and say, oh, I see, like, I am new to the project. We're all learning all the time. But when it's just the white screen in front of you and you see the red rejection, it can be easy to take things personally. And sometimes we bite the newbies without realizing we're biting the newbies at all. So the people that go out of their way to be really friendly, welcoming committees, birthday stuff, the things that aren't high priority, I really do think that stuff matters.
Right.
I'm wondering, I mean, Rosie, when you talk about the things to change, I do think there's been a tilt toward exclusion, deletionism. And I never understood that. I always feel like, what's the big harm of having, within, you don't want promotion or things that are truly not, but if something's obscure, what's the harm of having an article about it? And that's kind of what you're getting at, right? That having these fake, barriers and having people being so on top of it, I assume that's why, someone will win a Nobel Prize later, and will not have an article because someone was, on the watch. And is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
There's an interesting joke that, my book is called The Wikipedia Revolution, but after 10, 20 years, and I've realized it's a revolution in making a very conventional encyclopedia, right? We actually are very conservative. We have policies against too many photos, right? We say, oh, we're taking really serious now. We're a top 10 website. We can't do weird things anymore, right? So we see that sentiment in our community often, right? Richard.
Yeah, my big concern was that Wikipedia wouldn't be fun. I think that, we've heard like this from different things. Some of the things like, Annie mentioned citation needed, the whales and the dolphins and the porpoises. That's like one of the few things that are left. I think that's really important. That gets people involved. That gets younger people involved. It gets all sorts of people involved. A lot of people, editing pop culture topics. A lot of them start with that way. At some point, we decided we shouldn't cover pop culture in great detail, that we should put them on some like specialist wiki. And a lot of the modern pop culture that's on social media, we don't cover that at all because there are no like official standards. The New York Times doesn't write reviews of social media, type like comics and things like that. I think we have to like, be playful, be experimental. I think that also involves like using AI. Like we should use AI in a playful way that we're generating and doing interesting things with it. We shouldn't use AI in the sense that it becomes like this boring robotic voice thing, which is what it's going to become for most of the internet. And I hope that we can be like we've been using bots since, before I was involved in Wikipedia. I was involved in Wikipedia for a long time. But we've always used them thoughtfully and with like the human touch. And I hope we can be that way when the rest of the internet becomes this like droning, boring robots, or at least boring is okay, but like not fun robots, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of our fun parts of our community are actually off wiki, right? Because they've been forced off Discord, Facebook, other places. And that's kind of, I don't want to say sad, but a little bit regretful that that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it. I mean, I think that would actually kill the Wikipedia community. There are all sorts of governments and businesses that maybe don't like the Wikipedia community or doesn't like the way that it works, have rival approaches, which are varying quality. But I think the thing that would ultimately kill the Wikipedia community is if it's not fun anymore. If it's not fun anymore, then people wouldn't contribute. And they, obviously people contribute because they believe in the ideas, they find the topics interesting, but I think fundamentally having a fun and sociable community is a very important part of sustaining this project like this.
Yeah, great point. And this is something that yeah, go ahead, Sherry.
I mean, why can't be fun? I mean, I remember when I so one of my first impressions of the wiki community when Alice brought me on, sorry, Alice Backer, I forgot. brought me on was how open it was, how open it was, and how open-minded at least some of the folks that we connected with were. And I am finding that is we've become very in some ways we've for the purpose of scaling up, for the purpose of what you were talking about, what we've reached as this very influential platform, in some ways we've lost some of that it's not wild west nature, but kind of anything could happen feeling. And I feel like sometimes we can be a little bit too caught up in
like being reputable, right?
I feel a little bit, but it's not in a negative way per se, but sometimes when you grow up, you lose some of that some of what you had in your younger stages when you're just figuring out who you were.
Right.
And I'm wondering if we're not losing some of that along the way too, because sometimes it kind of feels almost like communities come against each other, and that hurts the information rather than working together. Even if you don't agree, sometimes it feels like a zero-sum game. And then what happens to the knowledge in between that? Maybe that country could have two names. Just to use a trivial example, maybe it could have two names, and that's okay, But there's some things I feel that we lose because of our humanity and the desire to be right versus the desire to be understood and to have information included that it is also right for some. So I don't know if that is very AI discussion topic oriented, but I do feel it is something that helps the community to grow and thereby helps the information also to continue to develop.
Right.
Because it attracts more people who would want to be a part of the community in general.
Yeah.
I want to segue on what you were saying there, Sherry, about communication and how different groups can react to each other. And it's because a couple of things here. It was only in the last day or two that I learned there was a Discord channel related to people who were doing some of the organizing work, panelists and such, for this conference. And I was like, okay, well, can someone send me a link? So they sent me a link, and then whoop, I'm in this Discord channel now. And so that's fine. Generally, there are all these Telegram channels that Wikimedians have used initially for conferences, but now there's just such a plethora. It is, for me, impossible to keep up with all of them, so I don't. Although I was in a conversation with Andrew in a Google chat regarding something to do with AI, and he said, oh, it's in that AI chat group. And I'm like, okay, like which one? And there he gives me a link. It's an AI chat group in Telegram. Great, now I'm in that one too. So now I can follow that conversation. And it makes me think like, okay, are you on Signal? Because there's stuff happening there. Are you on Discord? There's stuff happening there. Are you on Telegram? Where are you? What are you hearing? What are you reading? And how about all the people who aren't on any of those, or are on some of those, or just none of those, or a few of those? Like, how are we communicating, and who's outside the loop and isn't part of the conversation? And are they left behind, or are we just chatting because we want fun, which is part of it, and we want to be connected? Are we chatting so that we don't have two groups that are at odds with each other? I have no answers, but I do think about how we communicate and where we communicate and how much we communicate, and the overload, at least that I sometimes feel from communications. So yeah.
And you touched on a pet peeve of Richard, and he's interested in trying to create a kind of communication suite that we can rely on, and not just a smattering of WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, and all these other things, right, Richard? So.
Yeah, I think that the Wikimedia movement is, we're the main nonprofit technology project of the world. I mean, we started as an encyclopedia thing, but I think there's a lot of important nonprofit technology needs in the world. And there's going to be, like Wikipedia started, it was around the same time as MySpace. There's, now TikTok is the latest. There's probably something that's hotter than TikTok. Snapchat, well, I know Snapchat's maybe a little older, but there's gonna be something else, and they're all gonna be like commercial, and they're all gonna have weird motives, and they're all gonna and now they're gonna have more AI stuff, like, trying to appeal to your most extreme nature on any given topic. And I think that there is maybe a role for nonprofit technology in the social media space. And I kind of think that Wikimedia could be a part of that. And it's a little bit of a bold thing to do, but I think that, that the world is demanding it, having some reasonable way to talk to each other that's not mediated by, tech companies or governments. And maybe Wikimedia can be a part of that, probably just for our own internal purposes to start with. But I think that, there is some need for that, and maybe some of our culture could provide some of that. They're all these weird technology corporations are looking at our moderating systems and trying to copy it and doing weird things with it. But our community does have something to offer, and I hope we can be independent of the tech stuff, the technology companies.
Yeah, that's a good point. Final thing we're going to do, because we're the last thing standing between you and I think a pretty unusual cake that is Wikipedia themed. So the last thing we're going to do, and I'll give Noam some time to think about this while we march through other people's answers. In 20 years, Wikipedia will be ... And it's interesting, a lot of our answers are based around how human it's going to be, or what roles humans will have. But Annie, what is your response to this?
I only did one word. Yeah, I just wrote human. That's the only reason I like Wikipedia. Every reason that I like Wikipedia has to do with it being made by really great people. One of the first user pages that I stumbled upon that made me feel really empowered was Sammy's, because it just has this very simple line. I don't know if she even really thought very much when she wrote it. She just says, "Welcome to Wikipedia. This site was made by real people just like you," smiley face. And I thought, just like me. And yeah, I started editing a lot more after seeing that. AI is great for a lot of things, but if Wikipedia is the only search result on Google that's written by humans, which in a lot of cases it already is, that makes it even more valuable.
Good point. And I took yes, thank you. And I took the contrarian viewpoint, and as I said, it's going to be as important as ever, but less human created than ever. I know tomatoes going to be thrown at me, but I think it's inevitable. But we got to make sure we turn that into a good thing and not a bad thing, right? We're not just a victim of being used for AI, right? We are in the conversation. We're actively making things better, right? But Rosie, what did you say here? The same and different.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks for itself. It'll be different in some ways, and some things will probably never change.
Richard, how about you?
But, well, I guess around. I think we'll be around. I don't think that these other platforms are going to be around in 20 years. Just their the nature of commercial things. And I think we're going to be more Wikipedia than ever. I think we got to be playful and experimental and engage. We always had this vision of engaging a larger percentage of the population, and I hope we can actually do that in the next 20 years. Because Wikipedia is read by a certain amount of people, and it's not even like not enough people are able to consume it, but not enough people are able to contribute to it, even more importantly, and we suffer in terms of our knowledge base there. And if we can really engage communities and individuals, and maybe things like journalists on like a more meaningful level, now that the journalists have been abandoned by the technology companies, maybe they can find some new allies in a sort of a more nonprofit space. And I hope we can become even more Wikipedia than yesterday, tomorrow. Thanks.
Great. How about you, Noam?
I guess I think it will certainly, I think it'll be human. And I guess another strain I didn't mention earlier, but it relates to this is the idea of primary sources. Another one of your rules about like secondary sources. And it just, occurred to me that primary sources are going to be very important. I recently learned about a project in French Wikimedia called Lingua Libre, which is a was designed to allow people, like, you know, it was trying to sort of preserve, the French government was supporting it because it's designed to preserve obscure dialects, and it makes it very, very easy to record a word or a phrase and upload it to the commons. Like, I mean, it's so easy as I could do it. I could just record some New Yorkisms that I wanted to put up there. And I just feel like it was an incredible tool because it was so easy to use, and it preserves people's speech, and it makes it, you know, in a copyrighted, very permissive license. It just was a brilliant thing. And I could just imagine a million uses for it of other of cultures and communities that are not easily reached. Like the point, it wouldn't even be like a researcher has to go there. You could, you know, you need internet access, and that's about it, and a computer, I guess, of some sort, or a phone. But then you can really have your story, your pronunciation uploaded. And I just feel like Wikipedia, I think in the future, will have to be more amenable to video and audio. And I think it will have to sort of, if it really wants to be more inclusive, will have to, again, bend on this idea that only secondary sources are what you can use to write about things. There are oral histories, or just there are things that are worth preserving, that are whatever you want to call knowledge, that need to be preserved and kept and belong on Wikipedia. And it will need to change the rules, and there need to be some innovative technology, which I thought this Lingua Libre was really a very brilliant technology to me, and made it very simple. So I could just see a Wikipedia that would be much more like more visual, audio, more less based on secondary sources. I mean, it's a hope, I guess.
Right, right. All right. Thank you so much for the panel, for your responses. Thank you. And then thank you for your responses here. Look forward to reading them. I'm going to hand it over to Richard and Mark for the last instructions. We're going to go out and try to take a group photo before the light goes out, and then the cakes, right? Go ahead, Richard.
So yeah, before we take our group photo and get the fabulous, partly is AI. So the cake is a combination of AI and human design, which is what we're aiming for. So hopefully we're not too robotic, and you know, we're building things. So I wanted to welcome everybody to Wikimedia New York City. We're your friendly local Wiki neighborhood group. We have. You're welcome to join our events, wikinyc.org. Check out our events. We have 2 events coming up next month. On February 8th, we have a hacking night for those who are technically inclined. So you can go hack and work on things and play with things and learn things, and maybe even just hack a Wikipedia article. That's a valid way to hack. And February 21st, we have our Wiki Wednesday Salon, which is sort of a miniature of this conference. Our events are often at 424 West 54th Street, a place called Prime Produce. It's sort of an art collective and other stuff. And you're very welcome to join our mailing list and join our Discord server. And I hope you can join and participate. And if you want ideas of events and things you want to contribute to Wikipedia and other Wikimedia projects, we're here. We're, you know, your local volunteers. We're very interested in engaging with all the New York communities and stuff beyond. So thanks. Well, the next local hackathon is February 8th. And the next Wiki Wednesday Salon, which is more of a social / non-tech event, is February 21st, and they're both on West 54th Street. And I hope you can join. Thanks.
Just real fast, I want to thank you all again for coming. In the spirit of Richard's sort of playful interaction with AI and nonprofit tech, the Brown Institute that I run, the second Wednesday of every month, should have been the second Thursday of every month. So think about it, so second Thursday every month, STEM. That's awesome. Second Wednesday every month kind of sucks. But anyway, it's the second Wednesday of every month. We have an open sort of it's a kind of dine and design event. So we're down in the space downstairs in the playpen, as you called it, and it's dinner, and it's let's experiment with AI. Let's see what kinds of playful things we might be able to do, what kinds of tech we can build, that sort of thing. We'll also send out some information about the granting opportunities that we have. We want to fund in this area to help support the work that you might do. And we have other events like this coming up. The next one, Julia Angwin will be on a panel about AI and elections. And then after that, we have a panel with Creative Commons and AI. So, and over the course of the day, there were 237 of you that came through the event. So that's kind of awesome too. So thank you very much.
Happy Wikipedia Day. Let's all go out in front with the steps and we'll take a photo there and get some cake. Thank you, everyone.
I'm gonna stay for the photo.
Yeah, yeah.
We gotta
Thanks
go.
so much.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have come. I probably won't do it like this.
That is great.